Hey folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd. Today, the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they won't actually be doing any football, but they will be gathering together as a football team for the first time as a 90-man unit in the 2025 season. They did OTAs, they did minicamp. Now we're getting ready for training camp. We're expecting all 91, actually, players to report to St. Vincent College today. That is happening this morning. I am on my way there right now. Driving out good old Route 30 in Westmoreland County. And today I want to talk about something that is going to happen later today, and that is the conditioning test. That is the one and only thing football even adjacent on the calendar for today. Everything else is just getting guys moved in and the like. But there is the strength and conditioning test. And if you recall last year, the strength and conditioning test was a disaster. The Steelers go out for their run test. Starting quarterback Russell Wilson injures his calf, a calf injury that lingers and costs him most of training camp. He then returned, played in one preseason game, but aggravated that calf injury before the start of the regular season and ended up missing a good chunk of the regular season thanks to that injury. That was a pretty inauspicious start to the 2025 season for the Steelers' new strength and conditioning staff. I'm sorry, 2024 season for the Steelers' new strength and conditioning staff last season. Uh, they replaced Marcel Pastor, who'd been with the team over 20 years, in 2024, and brought in Phil Matus, a Western Pennsylvania native, a guy that I know to be in the industry well regarded. But that was a bad first day on the job. That wasn't really his first day. He started in OTAs, but that was certainly a bad first day of training camp for Matus and his staff. And things got worse in 2024 from there. The Steelers had an incredible increase year over year in soft tissue injuries. And obviously, nobody wants injuries, but not all injuries are preventable. There's nothing anyone can do when, say, Troy Fautanu dislocated his kneecap by stepping on the side of someone's foot, or someone breaking a bone, or Ryan Watt's neck injury, and things like that. Those are not preventable. But soft tissue injuries are seen in NFL circles as at least somewhat preventable. And the one of the primary jobs of the strength and conditioning staff is to prevent those injuries. And the Steelers did an awfully poor job of that last season. I wrote a very long story at SteelersNow.com this morning about this and what the Steelers are doing in 2025 to hopefully have better results. They obviously did not fire anyone. They didn't replace anyone. They haven't made any large public proclamations about how they're going to do things differently this time around. But I talked to a number of Steelers veteran players. I talked to a CBS Sports injury analyst, Marty Jaramillo, and I think there's a plan here in place from the Steelers so that things go better than they did last year. But this is critical. You can't have another season like last year just from the standpoint of you don't want that many players to be injured, but also you can't have players checked out on what the coaching staff is telling them to do because they're seeing some negative results in one area, and then they lose all of the positive impact of all of the other good advice that they're getting. A critical season for the Steelers strength staff after a struggle last year. Wrote all about it at SteelersNow.com. It's a long article. Spent a lot of time this offseason on it, so please go check it out. But I just wanted to talk here about those conversations with players. It's interesting. I started to hear rumblings about this strength. Well, actually, let's go back even further than that. When the Steelers hired Matus, he had come from Boston College, and he was a Western Pennsylvania guy. But of course, Mike Tomlin's son played at Boston College, and so there's a connection there. And like, was this a good hire? Is this someone that people thought highly of in the industry, or is this just going with the local guy, or just going with the guy that Tomlin knows because his son played for him? I talked to some people I trust in the industry, some people I have long relationships with, and everyone told me that Phil Matus is a well-respected coach in the industry, that he's someone that was sought after, that probably had other options, maybe not at the NFL level, but certainly at the high major college level. And so I kind of just left that there. That's just information gathering for me. After the sled incident last year, obviously trying to find out what happened, but also why. Like last year's strength and conditioning test went way longer than we had been accustomed to it going in years past, and I just want to know why. I want to know what was different, and so I talked to a lot of players last year, and it sounded like a lot of players were frustrated with what they considered to be a college mindset. That this wasn't a staff that had pro experience, and you could tell they weren't treating pro players the way they're used to being treated. And there were some personality conflicts in there as well. I mean, that's just going to happen when you have a new coach. Not everybody's going to like him. But when you put that on top of the pile with everything else that was going on, it was a pretty rough start. And so when we got to OTAs and minicamp this spring, I set out to talk to players off the record, or well, actually on background, technically, meaning that I can use their words, but I'm going to keep their identities out of the article so that they can be honest about what they think is happening. And I thought it was very interesting that almost every player I talked to said, I feel good about going into this year. They've noticed changes. They've noticed significant changes in the way things are going in terms of the individuality of approaches. That very thing that was an issue last year, now guys are talking up. They're saying, yeah, well, they're now they get it. They're treating us like pros. They're talking to our personal trainers and making individualized plans. And um, it's important because you get, like as I said, you can't lose. As Marty said in my article, you can't lose the weight room. You can't have players tuning out the message overall. And so, but the other thing I thought was interesting that I heard from the players was almost everybody brought it up. We have to be responsible for ourselves, and I think that's interesting. Yeah, probably the role of the strength and conditioning staff on an NFL team has, in some ways, never been less important. It's not like the olden days back in the '70s when guys had summer jobs and would be out of shape when they reported to camp, and then they had to get them in shape. These guys are in incredible shape year round now. They almost all have access to personal trainers and private coaches and things like that. So players have plenty of resources to stay healthy on their own. So I think the idea that players taking a personal interest in and saying, "Look, this is my responsibility. This is my body. This is how I make my money. I've got to make sure it's taken care of." Is an interesting, maybe impact from all of this that I got from. I think every player I talked to had some form of that message when I asked about these issues. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, the run test is today. We'll see if somebody pulls a calf or if this strength staff, as I wrote, is able to make that year two jump that Mike Tomlin talks about so often when he's talking about his players. That's all I got for this morning. We will have an afternoon drive that will be later than usual because Mike Tomlin talking after that run test. Then I'll have to write, and then I'll get with Smitty here for the afternoon drive. Then make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss that. Plus, all the video coming out today from Move-In Day and Tomlin as well here on the YouTube channel. And until then, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and enjoy.